Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all ways submit to him, and he will make the paths straight. The sermon title this week is Detours When God Redirects Your Journey. What do y'all think gave me the idea for this sermon? How many people's been down Lindy Gap recently? Riverside's closed. Gosh, they're redoing up, so you have to go all the way to back down to 13th Street to get here. Or if you go to the hospital, you gotta go all the way around. So, a lot of detours. And driving around town, there's a lot more detours going on than what you really know about. Have you ever been driving somewhere familiar? Confident, you know the exactly where you're going, when suddenly an orange barrel, flashing lights, a road closure sign appears, detour. Immediately, what happens? Frustration rises. You had plans, you had a route, you had an expected arrival time. How many people like to beat that arrival time that they give you on GPS? And that orange barrel, those cones, they mess up all your plans. But now, the road you intended to travel is blocked, and you're forced to go onto another path. Life often feels like that. You plan for one career, but life sent you another way. You expected healing, but instead you faced hardship. You dreamed of certainty, but instead encountered confusion. You thought God would take you straight to the promise, but instead you found yourself on the winding road. But here's the good news. God's detours are never his denial. Sometimes the detour is a divine direction. Sometimes what feels like a delay is actually protection. Sometimes God reroutes us because he sees dangers that we cannot see. Exodus 13:17-18 reads, when the Pharaohs let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country. Though that was shorter, for God said, if they face war, they might change their mind and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by desert roads towards the Red Sea. Notice this. God had delivered them in that scripture. God had a destination for them. God did not choose the shortest route. The quickest road was not the safest. God chose the detour. Why? Because he knew what they were not ready to face. Like in their everyday life, he knows certain things that we're not ready to face. God's detours are often our protection. We often assume the fastest way might be the best way, but God sees beyond our limited vision. Israel could not understand why they were not taking the direct path, but God knew what awaited them. What looked inconvenient was actually mercy. What looked inconvenient to them was actually a true blessing to them. Some closed doors in our lives were God's protection. Sometimes when he closed that door, he was protecting us. That job you didn't get, that relationship that ended, that move that fell through, the opportunity that disappeared. You call it disappointment. God may call it deliverance. Here's a little illustration. A child may cry when a parent pulls him away from the traffic, not realizing danger was inches away. How many times have you went and pulled your kid away from something, or went and had helped somebody, and they get frustrated with you, but you was protected them. That's what God does for us when he gives us detours. Trust God even when his route confuses you. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your understanding. Not your understanding, not your map, not on your timetable. Detours are not a wasted season. We learn things in our detours. There are training grounds where we can learn and experience more things. The wilderness was not just about travel. It's about transformation. If you go straight to your destination, do you learn anything from that? Do you learn a new way? Do you meet new people when you don't go the same direction every time? God needed Egypt out of Israel before the Israelites could fully enter the promised land. He needed to get their past ways out of them before they could actually enter the promised land. Things that they learned, religious laws that they learned, he needed them to forget that. That's why it took them so long, 40 years, to forget what they learned as a child. Sometimes God detour is less about geography and more about your growth. Sometimes he will give you a longer path to travel so you learn more, so you get more growth, more experience. You may be asking, why is this taking so long? Perhaps because your faith needs to be strengthened. Your character needs to be refined. Your dependence needs to be deepened. Your relying on God needs to be deepened, where you follow through all the paths. Your testimony is being written in all those detours. If you have an easy life, you go straight to the point. What do you tell somebody when they're having trouble and you want to help them? Your testimony is your experiences with the troubles and getting there. James 1, 2 through 4 reads, consider it pure joy whenever you face trials, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Testing of your faith produces perseverance. It helps you to get through other situations. The detour may be uncomfortable, but it is productive. It gets you where you want it to go, but it gives you more experience getting there. Because you never know when that's going to happen again, and that detour is going to pop up again. A GPS recalculates you when you miss a turn. It doesn't abandon the destination. It simply adjusts the route. God is never surprised by your setbacks. God is never surprised by them like we are. He just recalculates. He recalculates how to get you to your destination. God detour still leads to where He wanted you to go. The Israelites eventually reached the promise. The route changed, the timing changed, the process changed, but God's promise did not change. You may feel delayed, but if God is leading, you're still on course. If God is leading you, you're still on course for the destination. Romans 8:28 reminds us, and we know that all things God works for the good of those who love Him. Not some things, not easy things, not convenient things, but all things. Even the delays, even the pain, even the redirection, and even those seasons, the wilderness seasons where you feel left alone. He is training us. He is redirecting us. God can use every detour for His glory. Here's some examples of people in biblical examples. Joseph, he dreamed of leadership, but his route included pits. slavery, prison. Yet, every detour positions him for the palace. Moses, he was raised in Egypt, fled to Midian, spent 40 years in obscurity, the detour. But Midian prepared him to lead. Paul wanted to preach in Asia, but the Spirit redirected him to Macedonia, the detour. And Europe heard the gospel when he was led there. Here's the big one. Jesus, even Calvary looked like a devastating detour, but through the cross came resurrection. Our responses during the detour, we have to keep trusting. Faith is not trusting when the road is clear. Faith is trusting when the signs are confusing. 2, we need to keep moving. Don't camp forever in frustration. Move where God leads you. You come up to that road closed sign, are you going to just sit there? You're going to go the other way and head towards your destination in a different direction. Third thing we've got to do is keep listening. God often gives fresh instructions on unfamiliar roads. Just like that GPS. If you make a wrong turn, do a U-turn. Turn left here, turn right here. God is always giving us instructions on where He wants us to be and how He wants us to arrive at our destination. Fourth thing we've got to do is keep believing. The detour is not the destination. Your destination is on the other side of that road closed sign. So when you get there, that's not your destination. He wants you to keep going another way. There's our stories of people missing flights, grieving the inconvenience because they missed a plane, only to later discover that that plane crashed. If God hadn't gave them a detour or changed their path, they would have been on that plane. But God had a reason to give them that. What felt like tragedy became protection. How many times has God spared us from dangers that we never knew existed? How many times do you think God has spared you from dangers that you never knew? One day in heaven, we might discover countless detours that saved our lives, our family, and our future. Don't despise the detour. You may feel delayed, confused, rerouted, frustrated. You thought life would look different by now. But hear this clearly. God has not abandoned your journey. If God has rerouted you, He is still with you. The road may be longer, the path may be unfamiliar, but the destination remains secure when God is your guide. Isaiah 55, 8-9 reads, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways." What we think, God don't want to hear because He knows what's going to protect us. He wants us to ask Him, but His ways are the best ways. Sometimes God's best blessings comes from roads that we never have chosen. Let me read that again. Some of God's best blessings come from roads we never would have chosen. Just think about that. Things in your life that you was planning on doing one thing and something else happened and you chose a different route. That was God showing you the best way to get there. So when life says detour, don't panic. Pray, trust, and follow. Because God's detours often lead to divine appointments. He may have somebody there on your detour route that He wanted you to meet. He wanted you to see. Perhaps someone today feels stuck on an unwanted road. This is time to place your surrender, your map to God's map. Maybe your prayer today is, Lord, I don't understand this path, but I trust your direction. When you trust a driver, you don't have to fear the detour. Your detour may feel inconvenient now, but God may be using it to protect you, to prepare you, to position you into something greater than you can ever imagine. We need to stay faithful, need to surrender, and keep walking on the path He puts before us, because God still knows the way.